Hello everyone. Today we're looking at another one of Henry Mohamed Steel's games, and this time he's got the white pieces, and we're very fortunate for it. He's not an IM at the moment; he's an FM. This is 2 years before becoming an IM, and he's got a very strong rating for an IM, 2397, playing against a strong IM from Switzerland, Richard Forster. And okay, let's dive into the game. E4, C5, knight F3, D6, knight C3, HC, A6, and we get to this moment where we have the move e6, bishop b3, and castles. And castles isn't really the sharpest way of playing the position. It's a safer way. Going g4 is a very sharp way of playing the position, and it poses some interesting questions to black, like how are you developing your knights? Because I might potentially just sack my bishop on e6 and have a lot of compensation for it after knight takes e6. That's very typical ideas, but not necessarily always available. But with his bishop on b3 it is now. But we have castles, and both sides castling f4, knight c3, and a novelty by Henry, a3. And bishop e3 is a more typical way of playing the position, but a3, perfectly sound move. Bishop d7, king h1, stepping out of the way, rook c8, bishop e3, and now rook e8. Queen f3, shifting the weight of the queen to the king side, and queen a5, bringing the other queen to the middle game. And f5, now this is a moment where black needs to decide how to deal with this f5 break. He starts with knight takes d4, which is met by bishop takes d4. Getting rid of that knight is important because that knight is keeping an eye on the f5 square. So now black should decide, okay, is he trading on f5 or is he going to play e5 himself? And both are actually quite okay. I think taking on f5 is actually very interesting because it keeps this queen that you brought to a5, it keeps her doing something. And actually you can go look at this, white isn't really achieving too much in this line. By going queen g3, stuff like knight h5, and the queen not achieving much could even lead to bishop e6, and it feels like black might even consolidate. But e5 sets, after bishop takes d4, e5 sets up a very particular plan for black, and he wants to play with a closed position. So the move bishop f2 is played. Now e5 would have gone really well with the typical Sicilian sacrifice on the c3 square. If white recaptures with the queen, then simply the queens could be traded off, and black has got more than enough compensation. If it's recaptured with the pawn, black's plan is basically to go rook c8 and ask white, what are you doing about this weak c3 pawn? Trying to defend it through bishop e1 is going to walk into bishop c6, and the e4 pawn is very weak now suddenly. So that cannot be done through bishop e1. You need to go c4, but now your light squared bishop is very weak. So bishop c6, and black has got full compensation. Your weak pawns on a3 and e4 are really going to paralyze white's position, and him trying to go attack on the king side is going to be too slow, and black might even find safety one day on the queen side. So after the move bishop f2, this was really black's moment to show us why he played the move e5, but instead he goes bishop c6, and which is a fine move, just putting some pressure on that pawn. But okay, that pawn can't be taken yet, so just another developing move, rook a d1, and now b5, trying to find some purpose on the queen side. But as you'll see after the move bishop h4, Steele's got a concrete idea in his mind. He wants to enter with the knight via d5 and just launch an attack on that king side. So black goes b4. He feels like he's committed to a plan on the queen side, so he goes ahead with it. And Steele continues with his plan, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, another move knight d5, which he wanted to see. And black maybe would have been better if he just decided to go bishop takes d5 at this moment, and queen b6 holding on to both pawns. And maybe this is one of those scary positions you don't want to allow your opponent to get into, where they just can continue advancing with a strong center and an unopposed bishop looking at that f7 square. But it could also be one of those situations where you manage to trade down pieces and the opposite side color's bishops give you a draw. But this wasn't seen in the game. Instead, in the game, after knight d5, Richard goes b takes a3, and I think he does this to kind of muddy the waters. He goes to that extra pawn, allows knight takes f6 check, and now Henry just goes b takes a3. Queen c7, you need to run that queen back to the queen side, but now you're kind of asking yourself, why did I move it to the queen side in the first place? Queen h5, this is why you needed to run that queen to the queen side. It's because queen h5 comes with tempo against this f7 pawn. And now you need to start proactively playing defensive moves like king h8. Because some rook advance might come. Bishop takes f7, going after the pawn, rook e7, and now bishop e6. And this bishop is just a stunning piece. And this brings us to the first tactical moment of the game. Black could have probably gotten away with the move bishop takes e4 here. And the point is white only has one proper defense, and that is to go rook d e1. The reason is that you can meet queen takes c2 with the move rook e2. But we'll get to that line in a moment. Let's just quickly show you what black's real threat is. Black wants to go queen c6 and hit with tempo against that g2 square. And as white, you can now try this. Rook takes e4, queen takes e4, bishop takes c8. But now, luckily for black, he holds on to all the material with queen c4, just forking those two pieces. But white stands a lot better in this line after the move rook d1 and queen takes, and now queen h6, just pinning all black's pieces down to defending that king and the weak 8th rank. Also, d6 is very vulnerable, and f6. White doesn't have any sudden back rank threats against him and should go on to convert this type of position. Let's quickly get back to this position, why rook d e1 is so important after black takes that bishop. After rook d e1, if queen takes c2 with a similar idea of playing with tempo against this g2 square, notice now in the other line after rook f e1, you wouldn't be able to play rook e2 because now you'd have a hanging rook. Sorry, oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. You would have a hanging rook on the d1 square. So rook d1 is the important move in the line. Now the move queen c6 doesn't work because it doesn't come with tempo against that g2 square anymore, and white can simply pick up that rook, and black's going to be playing down a rook because your bishop's also hanging on e4. So that's the importance of the line with rook d1. But actually, black can play queen c2 after rook e2, not go back queen c6, because that would be a blunder, but queen c1. And the point is that this queen is actually not hanging, so white needs to deal with this back rank threat for the time being. So rook g1, and now black can simply play rook takes e6, and after this is traded, go d5. And the point is white is probably still a lot better, but black's bishop might find a home on g6, and the queen is retreating and maybe even getting back this e6 square for the time being. White isn't finding any play at the moment, but this is also one of the positions that might have been calculated and thought that, okay, well, you're up the exchange, you're down the exchange as well, so he didn't want to go for this in any case. So he went for something not as murky with calculation, because this was very deep to calculate. Instead, he just gives up the exchange immediately in this position. Sorry, after bishop e6, he just gives up the exchange and goes bishop takes e4. The difference is that white starts his attack on the king now with queen h4, forking that bishop and pawn on f6, and both need to be defended f5. And Steel is clever now. He doesn't go queen f6 check immediately, which would allow the queen to g7. He goes e7 first, just stopping communication. And that this provokes Richard to go king g7. Well, just going rook e8 first, although tricky, might have been a bit better to play. But king g7, and now queen g5 check, and the king walks in. And now the exchange is just given back by Henry. And his point is that the king needs to take on e7 now, and you have the move rook f1, which is kind of a very scary threat to pick up the queen. And this needs to be dealt with, and the king needs to find safety. It's not just the checking threat, it might even be a mating threat. If something like this is played, you could probably even try and mate the king. Oh no, I was right the first time I looked at it. It's just picking up the queen. So this is what you have in mind. as white if this isn't dealt with. So move rook e8 is tried in the game. And now you should maybe just pause the video and see if you can find the winning idea for white here. Okay, I've given you like 2 seconds, so let's dive into the winning idea. If you found this, you did well, because Steel didn't find this. Going queen takes h7 is what was played in the game, but it doesn't win by force as the other line does. The other line is very cool. It basically maneuvers via checks with the queen all the way down to h3. And starting with queen g5 check. And you notice the king can't go to d7 because of rook f7 check. So you only have one square as the king, and that's to d6. But now queen g4 check. Sorry, the zigzags were like this. And we'll get into why king d5 is weak. But specifically, for the time being, king d5 walks into rook d1. And now king c5 and king c6 are the same because of this check, and you're dropping the rook. So, okay, the king needs to retreat after the queen gets to g4. So king e7, and now you have queen h4 check. Remember, the same ideas apply to king d7 again. So he goes king e6, and now queen h3 check. A very nice move. And we'll get into why king d5 doesn't work. But let's just say he retreats back for the time being. Now, the very nice tactical motif, why you wanted to get your queen from here to here with tempo as white, is that you can go rook f7 check, king takes, and pick up that queen with a skewer. Very, very nice. Now, in this line, the computer prefers white a lot after the queen gets to h3 and the king gets to d5. But the same ideas don't apply. You don't necessarily get this rook, but you do get a massive attack. That's different than in the game, and it can be approached via different means. So I'm not too convinced, but apparently the line looks something like this. Sorry, without rook check first. Sorry, without including that rook check, just simply queen check first. And after if the king goes to c5, then you've got this queen check, and you're basically removing the king from defending the queen by force. So the king needs to go to c4, and this is becoming very tricky for black to play, and you can just see that white has got more than enough compensation with this king just creeping up the board. So I didn't find the line convincingly after this. Black could still probably be fine, but this seems like way more advantage than in the game after the move queen takes h7 check. Although he converted pretty neatly after this. Queen takes h7 check also makes the point that, okay, you've got 2 passed pawns now. You could probably even trade and go for this endgame if you wanted to, but he doesn't. He just keeps the tension for a while. Queen back to e4. Queen b6, h3, rook e7, and now rook f8. After this move, we finally have our queen trade with queen c5. And the final move of the game, actually, rook c8 check. And the point of getting rid of this h7 pawn is that these 2 pawns are now passes. So something like rook c7 is going to walk into this trade, and white can simply, sorry, black needs to recapture. White can simply go g4, and it's game over. This king is very close, and it's one of those situations where white is probably even getting the move h5 in, and these are 2 connected passed pawns. Black's king can never capture the backwards one of them, needs to stay close to defending them, and white is going to gobble up these extra pawns and run another one through the board. Just a great game from start to end from Henry Mohamed Steel. I hope you enjoyed and found some of the things he did instructive, even the queen takes h7 check, although missing that deep positional play in the end, making it seem easy because I didn't go through too much, but Richard did make a few mistakes as well. So in any case, I hope you enjoyed, and please go watch some of his other games and some of the other players' games. Like the video and subscribe, and enjoy your day. Thanks for watching.